Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Remotely Unique with Mary Baca, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hi there, this is Mary Baca, airing live from Albuquerque, New Mexico after a 2-week break. I was in Longmont, Colorado, visiting a good friend, and then came back, was back a couple of days, and then off to Santa Clara, California for a conference that just ended up being really dynamic. It was an energy psychology conference called or put on by the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. And I'll tell you more about that. But first, I have to tell you who I am for those of you that have never heard my show before. Again, my name is Mary Baca, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist and holistic practitioner practicing in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and elsewhere remotely, hence the name Remotely Unique, the name of the show. I have a private practice called Odyssey Counseling that I have maintained 27 years. I'm blessed in that it is a thriving counseling practice, and I have 4 amazing therapists who work for me, work very hard to help people and help people reach their goals and get past their emotional difficulties or things that they're struggling with. And then I have a second business called Resilience Integrative Services that I've had for going on 5 years now, and that has evolved and is primarily a holistic practice. I became a holistic practitioner 3 years ago, and I've been in the field of psychology for 30 years. Cannot believe it's been that long. In addition to having a private practice and 2 private practices, I guess you could say, I have, until about 10 or 15 years ago, I worked for other agencies as well. So, for example, I've done child abuse investigations for the state of New Mexico. I've taught in local colleges and university in the areas of criminology and psychology. I even developed some trainings for nursing and allied health that had to do with dysfunctional family assessments. And doing trainings is something that's near and dear to my heart. In fact, I'm getting ready to get back into that realm of things pretty heavily. I've, through the years, have done trainings for private companies on stress management and dealing with difficult people in the workplace and things like that. I'm getting ready to go on a training circuit and train locally and then at some point elsewhere. Doing some trainings with the Office of the Medical Investigator and even collaborating on some trainings with Mike Romo, who's a first responder that I've known for many years. You'll remember Mike was a guest on one of my shows in March. And we're doing a training on June 27th, actually, that is just going to be nothing short of amazing. It is called Doing Therapy with First Responders, Trauma-Ridden, Therapy Resistant. And so I think the collaboration with my mental health background and then Mike's experience as a first responder, and he's done many, many trainings also throughout the state. I'm just really looking forward to it. It's going to be amazing. In addition to providing therapeutic services to people, and I'll tell you my story later of how I got more and more into spiritual counseling. I actually went through a pretty huge shift and transformation about 1.5 or 2 years ago, and it really was life-changing, very transforming. And so now, in addition to just the regular counseling that I do, for those people that are interested or wanting, I do spiritual counseling and spiritual development, which actually means a variety of things depending on the individual you're talking to. one of the topic actually for today that I'm going to talk about is it's about our inner guidance, which is our intuition. And I'll talk more about that. But, I've always been interested in intuition, like I think a lot of people are. And since I went through this huge shift and transformation about a year and a half ago, I really opened up and really have spent some time training on intuition and really seeking assistance from spiritual practitioners that I respect highly, and I'll talk in detail about that. So, anyways, I wanted to just mention that the conference that I went to in Santa Clara, California, now at the beginning of June, it was just an awesome experience. I got the ability to meet hundreds of therapists and counselors and social workers that speak my language, in that they integrate energy work and holistic modalities into the therapy that they do with their clients. And that's not that common, even though once people learn how to do that or what that even means or looks like, it tends to be something that a practitioner or a counselor just really gets excited about. And I just cannot express to you how much more progress or greater progress I believe people make when you start to add some of those other modalities into the mix of things. Just think about it. Our mind doesn't just exist in our body. Energy is what fills our container, which when you look at it like that, that's pretty amazing and really, really, really critically important. So this whole realm of energy psychology and energy work that I do, and as a holistic practitioner and a therapist, and other practitioners I've met that we all do, is pretty vital to just a person's overall well-being, and even just can accentuate the effectiveness and the growth potential that people are able to make. So at the conference, for example, and I'm terrible with names and I didn't get any names together, but there was a psychologist there that talked about emotional freedom technique and EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And you've heard me talk about that. It's a modality that I have been trained in and have practiced now for going on 16 years. I have 3 levels of different training in that. And he did a combination, and that was so fascinating. He did a live demonstration, and I was not only impressed, but I truly was inspired. And in fact, this week, I'm going to start combining both modalities with my clients whenever it seems to be an appropriate and beneficial approach for that person. I've already been talking to some of my clients, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that ends up looking like and how it just, I'm sure, is just going to help them even more. I have to tell you, I came back from the conference really pumped up and again inspired, like I mentioned. You cannot imagine how this whole realm of energy work and energy psychology, it just has the ability to assist in helping my clients and people just even more than without that kind of work. The truth is, again, we're not just a body and a brain. We have energy that is inside our container. It fills our container, and it's just really, really important. It is also our energy, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree with this. It also is the part of us that's endless and goes on infinitely, even when our body gives out. So our energy is pretty amazing. Energy psychology covers a wide spectrum of topics and information and service integration. And with this, coming back from the conference, I had thought about this sometime last year. But after going to this conference, I've decided to start the Southwest Energy Psychology Professionals Association in the near future, and I'm just so thrilled about that. It will bring energy psychology and practitioners close to home, which can only help even some of the things that are going on locally in terms of just energy being at an all-time unrest, right? Like we feel that. Look at what happened in Orlando this weekend, just so devastating and so painful, just really made me cry and just very emotional about that, in such a senseless action that so many lives were affected and actually lost. But this association that I'm going to create, it will be one of collaboration with other practitioners who I highly respect for their work, and because they truly share my passion to help people at the most deepest level possible. So stay tuned for some pretty amazing things that are coming. I went to the conference with a couple of practitioners who are pretty amazing, Lorraine Milligan and Phoebe Conway, who are applied kinesiologists like myself. They've been doing it longer than I, though, and they both are really big mentors of mine and people that I respect and look up to and actually refer people to because I trust them. That's the thing is, I don't just refer someone to just any old practitioner. Like, I really am selective because I want to make sure that that person is in the best hands possible. So I do send a lot of people to Lorraine and Phoebe, and actually Lorraine is my kinesiologist. So she is a lot responsible for my good health. I feel just amazing 98% of the time, and Lorraine, has a big responsibility in that. So moving into today's talk about intuition, the show is called Intuition or Inner Guidance. And I think everyone has heard of intuition. The difference is with some of the connotations and thoughts that people associate with intuition. Some people think that intuition is like this woo-woo, far out thing. And certainly there are people that delve into extreme explanations or experiences or information that have to do with intuition. But that doesn't have to be the case. And as my guest host, Lupita Gurule Martinez, last week, she did such a great job in general. And thank you again, by the way. So appreciative of the job you did and just grateful for you. But she did a great job at integrating her topic, which was emotional intelligence, with this whole subject of intuition. And she mentioned terms like hunch. Whenever you have a hunch or you have a gut feeling, that is your intuition working, which it is. And so I think a lot of people, I don't usually speak in absolutes, so I won't say 100%, but I would say it's high up there in terms of people who have referred to, I just had a feeling about that, or gosh, I had a hunch that I shouldn't go out, that night. And that is people's intuition at work. I think one of the areas that's involved here that really tends to interest a lot of people is that of our subconscious or our unconscious mind. And when you start talking about intuition, there's a big aspect, and people that really talk about and have done research about that part of our brain that is responsible for information that we take in on all kinds of levels, whether it's reading somebody's body language or taking in whatever information we do with all our senses and not registering it in a way where we're aware of it. That's what our unconscious mind is. And a lot of people, relate intuition to that, which is right. They're accurate to do that. Scientists have been interested forever in our unconscious mind and the impact that it has on our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So all of that definitely is accurate in terms of, that it encompasses this topic of intuition. So I want to talk some more about some well-known people that have made comments about intuition. People, like Albert Einstein, who said that the only real valuable thing is intuition, and that's a quote from him. He also said there is no logical way to the discovery of these elemental laws. There is only the way of intuition, which is helped by a feeling for the order lying behind the appearance. And what he's meaning there is that intuition, and this is why it's kind of hard for a lot of people, I think, to grasp or believe in intuition, is because it's not visibly apparent to us. Intuition tends to be, it might be the first thing that comes to your mind. So say you're trying to make a decision and you don't give it much thought, you don't give it much rational thought. It's just that first kind of gut feeling that comes to your mind. That is intuition, and that's what Albert Einstein is referring to there in that statement. I know a lot of people really struggle with the whole idea of intuition because it isn't clear and it isn't always something that you can see visibly. And, people tend to be pretty much like, they want proof that something exists. They want tangible proof. They want to be able to see it and know beyond a matter of fact that it exists. But with intuition, that's just not always possible. But I tell you, from personal experience and personal growth, it is one of the most powerful things I have gotten in touch with. It has really just catapulted my growth and development, both personally and professionally. I mean, beyond what I ever thought could even happen in this last year and a half. So it's definitely something that, I wouldn't be talking about today if I didn't see great value in it. John Nesbitt, who was a former executive with IBM and Eastman Kodak. He's also an American writer in the area of future studies and the author of several international bestsellers like Mega Trends and Reinventing the Corporation. John Nesbitt, his quote, or a quote that from him is, "Intuition becomes increasingly valuable in the new information society, precisely because there is so much data." And Alexis Carrel, who's a French surgeon, biologist, and Nobel Prize winner in physiology or medicine, she said, "All great men are gifted with intuition. They know without reasoning or analysis what they need to know. Intuition comes very close to clairvoyance. It appears to be the extrasensory perception of reality." And Henry Reid, a British poet, says intuition is the very force or activity of the soul in its experience through whatever has been the experience of the soul itself. Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, said this about intuition. "Intuition and concepts constitute the element of all our knowledge, so that neither concepts without intuition in some way corresponding to them, nor intuition without concepts can yield knowledge." And I think that's a great point. I'm not saying that intuition can substitute or should substitute for rational, logical thinking. I'm saying that it is a great complement to all of that. And those aspects of our thoughts and our existence on a deeper level together just are phenomenal. George Crumb, who's an American composer of modern and avant-garde music, says, "In general, I feel that the more rationalistic approaches to pitch organization, including specifically serial technique, have given way largely to a more intuitive approach." Robert Graves, an English poet, scholar, and novelist, says, "Intuition is the supra-logic that cuts out all the routine processes of thought and leaps straight from the problem to the answer." And I think that I really like that that statement as well, or him expressing his belief. I think that intuition can be very valuable, even though it's something that comes up a lot, just spontaneously, and there isn't much thought to it, can be really valuable in making decisions. The other thing, too, is intuition tends to be a really positive-based train of thoughts or existence. And so if something comes up that is negative, so like if you meet somebody and the thought that comes to your mind is, I just hate that person. Like, I don't know why, but I hate them. That's probably not your intuition speaking, and there's probably some individual issues that are getting involved there in terms of what you're picking up from that person that maybe has you with that knee-jerk reaction. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, I hope I pronounced that right, said about intuition, the power of intuitive understanding will protect you from harm until the end of your days. And Anne Wilson Schaaf, a writer and lecturer, says trusting our intuition often saves us from disaster. I'm sure you've talked to people or heard stories where I know I've stopped sometimes when I've had plans to go somewhere and I just get a gut feeling, again, there goes that term, that it's just probably not a good idea for me to maybe make that trip. And most of the time, I would say 98% of the time, especially now that I'm really in touch with my intuition, I really tend to follow that and not question that. So I can't tell you, I can't give you the comparison, like what would have happened if I wouldn't have followed my intuition, because most of the time I just do what I feel and not follow through with the behavior. So getting more into intuition, it's undeniable that there's recorded incidences where intuition has prevented catastrophes and cases of remarkable recoveries, even like when doctors have been in surgery or tending to a patient and they follow their gut feelings. So, it's not, if you find yourself thinking, well, most people don't tap into their intuition, I think what's more accurate is that people tap into their intuition unknowingly. And I'd like to think and believe, based on my own experience, that the more time that you spend, and I'm going to talk some later about how you can open up your intuition even greater, but the more that you do that and spend time on that, it's like any other thing, right? If you want to really get good at something, or you really want to expand your knowledge base, it takes some time and effort, right, to learn about that situation and to spend time. It's almost like working a new muscle, so to speak. So, the thing that's great about intuition is that there also can be no denial that it does draw on the experiences that we've had. Past experiences, present experiences, and even external cues. So, I know when I was reading through some of these articles, there was made mention a professional race car driver who, and they didn't say the name, so it's not me this time forgetting the name, but they didn't mention it. But a race car driver that was, winning the race, and he was looking up at the crowd, and he noticed that the crowd was not looking at him, and that they were, and then I guess the look on their faces anyways, paying attention to those external cues, he slowed down, and I think there was a wreck up ahead or something that he couldn't see at the moment in his line of sight, but he did pay attention and he slowed down. He followed that external cue that he was able to get, and probably, avoided a really bad accident that he would have been in had he continued racing down the track at the speed that he was going. So that was really helpful for him. He knew something was wrong and he stopped in time. Clearly, we human beings need both conscious and non-conscious thought processes. There's no doubt about that. I read not too long ago, I had read that 86% of our behavior, our thoughts, feeling, and behavior are due to our subconscious. And, just seeing what I've seen and experienced with clients and personally as well, I would really say that number is really accurate. A lot of what we think and feel and do come from a non-conscious place in our mind. So it's interesting and important actually to be open to this whole realm that I'm talking about today. If you find yourself speaking negatively about it and you never have really looked it up or done any kind of research or read any kind of book or anything on intuition, it may be fear that's preventing you from taking an interest in it. I think that people tend to be fearful of things they don't understand or things that are foreign to them and unfamiliar. So, if you find yourself being negative about it, you might think about or ask yourself the question, what am I afraid of here? Is there something I'm afraid of in terms of looking at this possibility of intuition? We learn things consciously all the time, and those things get stored, whether we learn them literally or, figuratively. We experience them, and those things get stored on a subconscious level. We don't even realize so many of the things that we've learned, and there's some thought that intuition is just the things we've learned without realizing we've learned them. And I absolutely believe that is true. I just also believe, in addition to that intuition can come from other situations like, divine guidance. If you ever see my postings, my personal postings on Facebook talk about, being divinely guided, divinely inspired, and forever grateful for sure. Because I truly feel that, for myself anyways, and you don't have to feel the same way, but I truly feel that my intuition for quite some time now, probably about 1.5 years, has been through divine guidance, and I've been able to experience a lot of changes that have gone on in my life that have just been just amazing, along with experiencing things on a level where we store them and we just don't remember them. Is subliminal priming, implicit memory, implicit priming, emotional processing, and nonverbal communication. Those are all areas that you could research and look at, how those things interplay with intuition. And then with that, maybe again, I think it's important to just educate ourselves. And I think that for our whole life long, we're never done educating ourselves. There's so many things to learn, and discover about how we function and how each other functions. And then as a therapist, I always want to know, why do we function that way? That's something I love about my field for sure, is figuring all that out, which sometimes is easier than others. Going back to some of the negative connotations that people have, sometimes I think when people have a negative connotation about anything, really, it's because they don't really understand. So, if somebody mentions something about intuition that's negative to you, or I would ask them, I do ask people, well, what are you thinking intuition is? And the thing that I really want to emphasize is it's totally up to you to apply that term however you want to apply it. I would just say, if you have a limited understanding of what intuition is, then trust me, you owe it to yourself to explore and expand your knowledge base about what it is. And maybe even through that process, you'll learn what intuition isn't. Again, going back to what I said earlier in the conversation or earlier in my discussion today, intuition is certainly not a negative thing. And so if people use intuition for negative reasons, I would really steer clear of that. To me, intuition is meant to be a positive and growth-producing process, not negative at all. I think that some people who are very left brain and function more from a rational thinking place, have some difficulty with understanding how intuition works, which, at times taps into control issues that a person might have in terms of trying to make sense or needing something to make logical sense to them, where intuition, it isn't always this logical process that we can nail down and pinpoint, and some people are just very uncomfortable with that. I definitely would advise that if you don't know much about intuition, and or if you do, that you spend some time expanding that knowledge base. And for example, you can spend some time either in prayer, depending on what your particular beliefs are. You can learn how to meditate and really expand upon that practice. Anything that's going to really get you in touch and centered with what's going on in yourself. While I do think we have intuition accessible to us at all times, I think that it's easier to access that, especially in the beginning when you're first learning about it. I think, it's easier to access in silence, and where you're really focused on what's going on inside you in terms of your inner thoughts and your inner feelings. And, I've met a lot of people in the past 30 years in my practice and even personally that have a really hard time spending time quietly and listening to what's going on inside. I think that for some people who have been through a lot of pain, emotional pain, and different situations in their life, stopping and making the time to have quiet time and really get in touch with what's going on inside is not always a pleasurable thing. And so I think that for that reason, a lot of times people steer away from it. But getting in touch with intuition is a different process. And if you're afraid or hesitant to do it, there are practitioners like myself, who can help with that. And even my friend and colleague who hosted my show last week, Lupita Gudule Martinez, she has a spiritual based practice in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she also can help with things like that. And so if you're afraid to walk that walk alone, or you're just wanting guidance, maybe fear isn't even the deal, but you're just wanting guidance, there are people like ourselves that can help with that. And the beauty of it is, and it always just is amazing to me, just like counseling people, is it never looks quite the same for any two people. Really growing in your intuition, it's so beautiful to see and witness a person awaken to that. And it's not even anything I do personally. I think that I'm guided a lot in my work with people, and it's always something just amazing to watch that happen for a person and watch a person develop and grow in that way. And also just make it their own, because it is your own. It's your own. It looks like whatever you want it to look like. You can start if you want to start, and you can start wherever you want to start. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's also a couple of people who do CDs and write books, and you can YouTube them about intuition, and they both are excellent. One is Sonia Choquette. Her last name is spelled Choquette, and Doreen Virtue, and both of them, if you look any of their work up on intuition, they lay it out pretty in a user-friendly format. So they're both really good to look up some YouTube stuff or information on. So just to kind of summarize, intuition is receiving input and ideas without really knowing where you got them from. I mean, there is, and this is a whole separate show, right? But I'm going to mention there is part of intuition that just allows a person to know something. And I've experienced that a lot personally, is just what's called a knowing. Like, you just might know that it's not, a good idea to go to a certain workshop, or you just might know that you're going to go to a family reunion and it's just going to be an amazing event, So, and it can get even deeper than that. Again, it just depends where you're at. I believe in meeting people where they're at. And so, all of the things I've talked about today, there's different levels, and the sky is the limit in terms of how much you could even learn about your own intuition. So about a year and a half ago, I've mentioned that I, went through a huge transformation. But before I went through that transformation, I kind of hit the ground. I really, there was a lot of life-changing events happening. My sister had passed away, and another sister of mine who I used to be very, very, very close to stopped talking to me. We had a falling out, and we were not able to make amends, even though I made grave efforts to try to do that. And with that, in the same timing, my body was in a lot of pain. And I'll tell you later what was going on with that. But at the time, I didn't know why my body was in pain. I was in excruciating pains. My shoulders hurt, my elbows hurt, my hands had shooting pains going through them. And for those of you that ever deal with chronic pain, you know that, once you have chronic pain going on like that, it just seems to just go throughout your body. And I remember one day I was sitting down, having this conversation with God, just saying, really, this is all you got for me? Like, really? All this crazy, emotionally loaded, devastating things are happening because I didn't know what was wrong with my health. I mean, it could have been something minor, or it could have been something major, But it was that time in my life, and it's always hard to recapture it and put it into words, even in terms of what I experienced at that time. But I would really have to say, and I'm going to coin a phrase that Lupita Gudule Martinez has shared with me, and it's just so appropriate. It's, I had a breakdown, and then later it evolved into a breakthrough that was just life-changing. In that time, I spent a lot of time with Lupita as a practitioner. I mean, she really took me by the hand and did a lot of spiritual work with me, and which included really tapping into my intuition and really spending a lot of time and energy and meditation and prayer on this whole aspect of my being. And at the same time, going back to a collaboration works well. So at the same time, I was seeing doctors trying to figure out what was going on with my health. I was seeing Lorraine Milligan, who's my kinesiologist. I was doing everything I could to figure out and to pull out of this pit, this hole that I, had fallen into. It seemed like I was just walking along, and one day I just fell into the hole. I'm sure that it wasn't like that. I'm sure it was a gradual thing that happened over probably years. But at that time, the feedback that the doctors were giving me is they were testing me for lupus, which is, it's an autoimmune disease, pretty serious business, and I had test results at that time that really were congruent in agreement with that is probably what was going on. The head of rheumatology at a nearby hospital couldn't figure out, why I had the test results I was having that were showing serious concern. And yet he ran 27 blood tests and lupus just kept coming out negative, as did autoimmune disease, even though the numbers that I was turning in, it should have been a different result. In that time, I also figured out I had carpal tunnel, and that again was through it was through, talking with Lorraine and trying to figure out what was going on, and also these tests that I was having my doctor do. Painful tests. For those of you that have had neurological tests, they are extremely painful. But finally did get one of the diagnoses that he did say is that I had carpal tunnel. And for those of you, prior to this time in my life, I used to think, well, how painful can carpal tunnel really be? Well, let me tell you, it is excruciatingly painful. And that was the reason my shoulders, elbows, wrists, and hands were hurting. I don't have any repetitive things that I do, so I don't know why I have carpal tunnel. But from the point of getting diagnosed, Lorraine and I just put our heads together, and she put me on a holistic regimen that, my doctor was saying, hey, we need to do surgery, which involves clipping some nerves in my hands. I'm sure there are people out there that have had this surgery done, and it's a mixed bag. I've talked to some people that say it really helped them, and then I've talked to some other people that say it didn't really help. But I chose to not have that be my option that I was going to choose first. And I started on this regimen that I still am on. I've been on a holistic regimen actually for 3 years. And I am symptom free. I'm like 99% symptom free with no pain. So I am so grateful, to God and to Lorraine and just to possibly intuition. I would like to think intuition was involved in that, because really all those steps that I had to go through to go from point A to point D involved some logical thought, and then it involved some just following my intuition. And so that time in my life was life-changing, not just because of the pain I went through, but it really evolved me into this whole direction of spiritual growth. And it's not a place that I ever thought I would be or experience what I have experienced to this day. But I have to tell you, it's been amazing, beautiful. It really is embedded in everything I do now. And since then, I have become a spiritual advisor for people and a safe place for people to talk about spiritual aspects of who they are and spiritual quests that they want to take on. And I think I've, been able to walk several people's path with them and just watch them develop into just amazingness. So that is one way. And I could tell you numerous stories since a year and a half ago that you would maybe find hard to believe and not, but I believe them because, I've experienced them. Amazing things are happening in my career and in my life, and a lot of it is intuition. And then I have to show up, right? I mean, it isn't just a matter of getting an intuitive hit or intuitive information and then the rest falls in place. I mean, I also believe we have to show up, and anybody that knows me knows that I work very hard to step up to the plate and meet my intuition at the door and really follow through with the actions that it takes to solidify the guidance that I receive and the intuitive information that I get. I definitely don't wait for life to happen. I'm living it actively every minute of every day for sure. So intuitive decision making, it's actually far more common than people probably even are aware of. People might think that it's part of their common sense, and they might, just because they haven't really ever looked at it more, they might just think it is their gut feeling, their sixth sense, their instinct, things like that. But, the more and more you get into it, you'll realize it really is an inner voice and spiritual guidance, and when I say spiritual, I don't necessarily mean religious. I mean spiritual, as in, it could mean religious, right? For some people that want to go into that direction. But spiritual to me means just really getting in touch with your core, really getting in touch with your inner self and really listening and communicating with that part of yourself, and developing a higher consciousness, so that this information comes to me pretty readily. Every day and constantly. It is, my intuition, I think, has really helped me help people even more. So it's been truly a gift, for sure. And it is a gift that we all have. I'm not special. We all have intuition. What makes the difference is what you do with it. And, if you work more, spend more time working on really expanding that part of yourself, which you can do even, I mentioned meditation and prayer, but you can even do by journaling, you can do through hiking, you can do through crafts, anything that's going to just bring you to that core center part of yourself. In the holistic aspect of things, you can get into chakra balancing, have your chakras balanced, and have energy work done like Reiki, that I believe also really helped because I had that kind of work done as well, which I think really opened up all my energy systems in my body so that my intuition could just flow really easily and readily and not be stuck or get stopped. And I still do all of those things. I get worked on regularly, all the time. If you're wanting optimal results with your intuition, then you're going to get what you give in terms of how much time you make for it, how much time you make really for yourself and your inner guidance and your inner your inside thoughts and what you feel internally. And I don't mean the inside thoughts like people who have mental chatter going on all the time. That happens to me too sometimes. I'm not talking about those kinds of thoughts. I'm talking more about thoughts about yourself, getting centered with what do you want in life? What kind of guidance? If you could ask for guidance for anything that you want in life, anything that you want to see happen, I promise you, and those of you that don't know me, you may not believe me, but I promise you, you can have anything you want in life. And at some point on another show this month, I'm going to do a show on manifesting because that's a very real thing as well. And for that, I'll probably have a guest speaker or two come and join and share their thoughts about it. So that's pretty much what I have to say about intuition. I could go on and on about it. It is something that I talk about regularly. It is something that I live with daily, for sure. In closing, I wanted to mention I got my recent reports for the radio show, and I was really thrilled. I just started this radio program in March, and the page views from LA Talk Radio for March were 1,042, and in April they were 1,863. I am so thrilled. That is, considering that I just started this show, I think that's awesome and amazing, and I'm so grateful for that. The downloads from LA Talk Radio started for March were 1,222, and in April they were 1,668. And talk about intuition, I really feel like my intuition has guided me to have the guest speakers on the show that I have had, and also to identify the different themes that I've had. In March I did a series of interviews with first responders on PTSD and acute stress, which is a phenomenal series. In April, I did a topic of fear and how to overcome it, and had Lupita Gudule Martinez on the show a couple of times, and that was phenomenal. And then in April, I did some shows on creating workplace wellness or wellness in the workplace, and that was pretty amazing, and had Dr. Julia Bain on as a guest speaker. And this month is about, just connecting with yourself, really. And so, starting off with Lupita doing emotional intelligence, because I think that our emotions is something that it's a critical and important part of us that a lot of times people avoid dealing with. And so she did a great job. I listened to both shows and felt like I benefited. And that's the thing. I refer people all the time to the archives, and please do the same, because there's help in there for everyone. There's these little gemstones of information, whether it's from things that I've said or my guest speakers, that can just really help someone that's struggling or somebody that wants to expand their knowledge base. In closing, I just want to thank a couple of really good friends of mine, for being supportive of the show. They listen every week without fail. That means a lot. One of them is Wanda Radke. She lives in Longmont, Colorado. And the other is Mercy Castillo, who lives here in Albuquerque. And Lupita Gudule Martinez also has been very inspirational and supportive of the show. And I just want to thank all of you and any of you out there that listen regularly. Please do not hesitate to drop me an email, and I'll give you my email address. It is Odyssey, ODYSSEY .counseling, COUNSELING 111 @gmail.com. It's a new email address, so please note that. You can visit any of the sites to get archived copies of the show. You can visit Remotely Unique, that's REMOTELY-unique.com, Odyssey-counseling.com. And also we're on iTunes and Google Play, so you can go on and download past episodes, or you can subscribe to listen to the show every week. Thank you for giving me your ear and your time and attention for this time, and I will be talking to you next week. You guys have a great, wonderful, and amazing week. Bye.
You're listening to Remotely Unique with Mary Baca, only on LA Talk Radio.